The sun was setting over the colony on Zyre, casting long shadows across the dusty red plains. 11-year-old Lena moved carefully along the edge of the human settlement, her small feet stirring the soft soil. She loved exploring, even though her parents warned her about venturing too far. The colony was small, a handful of metal structures and domed greenhouses scattered across the barren land. But to Lena, every corner was full of secrets, waiting to be discovered. She carried her makeshift satchel, a small pack filled with supplies she thought might be useful in an adventure water, a snack, a flashlight, and a small, worn notebook in which she drew maps and wrote notes about the strange plants and rocks she found. Lena loved studying things. She liked understanding how they worked, even if it was just a jagged rock or a twisting vine that somehow survived in the harsh environment. The wind shifted, carrying a scent Lena could not place at first. It was sharp and strange, metallic almost, and it made her pause. Her instincts told her something was wrong. She scanned the horizon and saw movement, not the slow, natural drifting of sand and dust, but a rapid, calculated movement across the plains. Shadows emerged, sleek and angular, moving faster than any human could. Lena's heart began to race, and a cold realization settled over her. She was not alone. From the dust and the setting sun, the Valkyrie appeared, tall and alien, with long limbs and faces that seemed to shift as they moved. Their skin shimmered in iridescent colors, as if reflecting light in ways humans could not comprehend. They had come before, she knew, from stories whispered among the colonists. But she had never seen them this close. Her instincts told her to run, but before she could take more than a step, a net-like trap shot from one of the alien devices, ensnaring her. She struggled, her small arms thrashing, but the material was strong, almost alive, tightening with every movement. The Valkyrie laughed, a sound that grated on her ears, mocking and cruel. Another weak one. One of them hissed. Their voices were harsh, mechanical in a way, almost as if they had learned to speak human languages but with no concern for subtlety or tone. Humans are so fragile. They barely survive on their own worlds, yet they think they can explore ours. Lena's mind raced. She was injured, her ankle twisted during the fall when the net had trapped her, and each movement caused a sharp pain. But fear did not paralyze her completely. She studied the aliens. They were confident, organized, and cruel. But like all creatures, they had patterns. They did not notice the small, careful observations of a human girl. She noticed how one of the Valkyrie kept glancing at the horizon, how another adjusted its weapon with a slight hesitation, and how the leader of the group seemed to give silent commands with subtle movements of its fingers. Lena filed these details in her mind. Knowledge might be her only weapon. They dragged her back to their ship, a sleek vessel that hovered above the ground, its surface dark and reflective. The Valkyrie moved with precision, each step purposeful. Lena was forced inside, the net still holding her tightly. The interior of the ship was unlike anything she had ever seen. Walls seemed to shimmer with colors that made her eyes water. Tubes and cables ran along the ceiling, pulsing faintly with light. Strange devices hummed softly, and Lena felt a chill as she realized she was completely surrounded by alien technology. The Valkyrie spoke among themselves, their language a series of clicks and sharp intonations, though one of them occasionally muttered in broken human words. Lena did not understand the full meaning, but she caught fragments, words like sacrifice, dragon, and obedience. Her stomach churned. She had heard of the dragon before, a creature the Valkyrie kept on their conquered worlds to enforce fear. It was massive, powerful, and bioengineered for destruction. To the aliens, the dragon was the ultimate weapon. And now, Lena realized, she was intended to become its next offering. They landed near a jagged canyon, the air thick with heat and the faint smell of sulfur. The Valkyrie did not rush. They moved with calculated confidence, as if they were certain nothing could stop them. Lena was forced down a winding path toward the dragon's lair, each step excruciating. Her ankle screamed in pain, but she refused to let it slow her mind. She noticed the patterns in the alien guard's movement, the way they positioned themselves along the cliffs, and how they seemed to communicate silently with gestures. Every detail was a potential advantage. Finally, they reached the entrance of the lair, a massive cavern that yawned like the mouth of some ancient predator. Heat radiated from within, and Lena felt the vibrations of deep, powerful breathing echoing through the ground. She could not see the dragon yet, but she could sense its presence. The Varkari smiled, or at least, Lena assumed their faces indicated pleasure, mocking her with cruel gestures, making it clear they expected her to be terrified. The aliens pushed her forward. "Show yourself," one of them hissed. "The human is ready." Lena stumbled into the light of the cavern, and the world seemed to shift around her. The dragon was enormous, far larger than any creature she had imagined. Its scales glimmered with metallic hues, and its eyes, large and intelligent, fixed on her with an almost curious gaze. Lena froze, her mind racing. Every instinct screamed danger, yet she noticed something peculiar. The dragon did not move aggressively at first. It seemed to study her, its head tilting slightly, as if weighing her against something she could not understand. The Varkari laughed from above, thinking her fear would be enough to please the dragon. "Kill it," they commanded. "Show it weakness. A human is nothing." But Lena did not panic. She remembered the lessons her parents had taught her. About observation. About thinking clearly. Even in danger. Slowly, carefully, she began to move in ways that did not threaten the dragon but showed awareness and courage. She kept her eyes on the dragon, not the aliens, and made small, deliberate gestures, testing reactions. The dragon shifted slightly, and Lena noted that it responded to patterns and logic rather than blind aggression. Her mind worked fast. Perhaps, she thought, this creature could be reasoned with or at least influenced. The cavern was her new world, and knowledge was her shield. She moved with careful steps, avoiding rocks that might make noise, observing the dragon's breathing and tail movements, and noting every subtle twitch. Her small size and apparent weakness might make the aliens underestimate her. But Lena knew that her intelligence, her ability to read and adapt, could be more powerful than brute strength. The Varkari jeered again, thinking the girl was paralyzed by fear. "Look at her," one hissed. "She is too small to fight, too weak to survive. She will not last a moment." But Lena had no intention of lasting only a moment. She had already begun planning, imagining how she could turn this terrifying situation into an advantage. Her eyes swept the cavern. Jagged rocks could provide cover. Strange crystals along the walls seemed to pulse with energy, possibly unstable. The dragon's movements suggested that certain areas were more sensitive than others. Every detail was a piece of a puzzle that she would need to solve if she hoped to survive. She crouched slightly, limping on her injured ankle, and whispered to herself, barely audible, "I will find a way." The dragon's head tilted again, this time in a slower, more deliberate motion. Lena felt a spark of hope. This creature, designed to destroy and terrify, might respond to cleverness, to courage, in a way the Varkari had not anticipated. The Varkari continued their mocking, unaware that Lena's mind was already racing ahead. Every step they took, every movement they made, was being catalogued in her mind. She was not just a victim. She was a thinker, a planner. And in this cavern of fear, Lena began to feel a flicker of determination that grew stronger with every heartbeat. As the sun dipped completely below the horizon outside, the cavern was bathed in the warm glow of molten rock and the soft pulses of alien technology. Lena's small figure looked fragile in the vast space, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. The dragon watched her, curious and cautious, while the aliens laughed, unaware that the girl they considered helpless was quietly preparing to turn the impossible into opportunity. In that moment, Lena understood something profound. Being small, injured, or underestimated did not mean being powerless. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and filled with creatures that seemed unstoppable. Yet the human mind, when sharp and brave, could carve a path through even the most terrifying of places. And Lena was about to begin that journey not as a victim, but as a strategist, a survivor, and perhaps, in time, as a force the aliens would never forget. The cavern seemed alive around her, humming with potential, danger, and unknown possibilities. Lena drew a steadying breath, her small chest rising and falling with determination. She did not know how she would survive, but she knew she would not give up. The dragon, massive and silent, watched her. And somewhere deep inside, Lena realized that the real story, the one the Varkari would never anticipate, was just beginning. The cavern was alive with heat and sound. Lena's small body shivered, partly from the cool air that came in strange gusts from the cracks in the rock, and partly from the tension that pulsed through her. She knew she could not afford to panic. Her ankle throbbed, each step sending waves of pain through her leg, but she forced herself to move carefully, keeping her eyes on the dragon and ignoring the jeers of the Varkari who hung above in their hovering craft. The dragon, a massive bioengineered beast, shifted slightly on the cavern floor. Its scales reflected the faint lights of the alien technology embedded in the walls. Its eyes, deep pools of gold and green, seemed to measure Lena as though assessing her worth, her mind, her courage. Lena took a deep breath, telling herself that she needed to study it, to learn its patterns. Fear would not help her. Observation would. She noticed how the dragon's tail swung, slow and deliberate, brushing against the ground in regular intervals. Its head tilted as it sniffed the air, nostrils flaring. The breathing was deep, almost rhythmic, and Lena realized that the creature reacted to sound and movement. Small movements startled it less than abrupt or loud ones. She forced herself to breathe calmly, moving one hand at a time, careful not to make sudden gestures. The Varkari above laughed again, their high voices echoing through the cavern. "Do not waste time," one hissed. "The human is fragile. The dragon will finish it in moments." Lena ignored them. Their overconfidence was a weakness. They assumed the dragon would obey them perfectly. They assumed she would panic. Lena planned to use both assumptions to her advantage. Slowly, she sat down on a flat rock near the dragon's massive clawed foot. Her ankle protested with sharp pain, but she shifted her weight carefully to avoid further injury. The dragon lowered its head slightly, studying her. Lena's mind worked fast. She realized that this creature, though terrifying, was intelligent in a way she could understand. It followed patterns, responded to reason, and could be influenced. She extended her small hand slightly, not touching it, but showing movement that was deliberate and careful. The dragon's head tilted further, eyes narrowing. It was curious. Lena's pulse raced with a mixture of fear and excitement. The Varkari above had created a creature of terror, but they had not considered the possibility of a human mind engaging it in subtle ways. Lena spoke softly, mostly to herself, testing sounds, rhythms, and tones. The dragon twitched its ears, or what she assumed were ears reacting to her voice. She tried mimicking its breathing pattern, slowing her own to match the rhythm of the cavern. The dragon's body relaxed slightly. She had made a connection. A small, almost imperceptible bridge of understanding was forming. The Varkari noticed some change in the dragon. Their jeers faltered for a moment, then hardened into anger. "It does not obey," one hissed. "It should devour her." The leader of the group waved their hands, issuing silent commands that Lena could not fully see, but she could sense their frustration. The dragon remained cautious, refusing to follow the direct orders of its masters. Lena realized she had more power than she first thought. Knowledge and observation could outmatch sheer strength. She crawled slightly closer to a rock that jutted from the cavern wall, a vantage point from which she could see the dragon's reactions more clearly. She noted the patterns of its tail, the movement of its limbs, and the slight changes in breathing when it sensed stress or danger. Every detail was a piece of a puzzle, a key to survival. Hours passed, or at least, it felt that way. Time in the cavern seemed strange. The dragon watched, and Lena continued her careful study. She tested small gestures, each one deliberate, each one non-threatening. She extended a hand, then pulled it back. She shifted her weight slightly to one side, then the other. Slowly, she learned how to move without startling the creature, how to breathe without sending panic signals. The dragon's reaction grew subtler, its eyes softer and more focused on her than before. It seemed to recognize that she was different from other humans it had encountered. Lena felt a spark of hope. If she could understand it, if she could communicate in small, careful ways, she might be able to influence the dragon to act in ways the Varkari had not intended. She noticed other things in the cavern. Cracks in the walls that led to hidden passages, glowing crystals that pulsed faintly, and shallow pools of water. Each feature might provide an advantage or a tool. Her mind raced with possibilities. Even her small size could be an asset. She could move where the dragon's massive body could not, slipping through tight spaces to explore, to study, to prepare. The Varkari, growing frustrated, began to descend into the cavern, their hovering craft lowering closer to the ground. They moved with weapons ready, expecting the dragon to attack on command. Lena, however, had already predicted some of their movements. She watched as they approached, noting the angle of the rocks and the timing of their steps. Her plan was simple but dangerous. If the dragon could be guided subtly, it could turn its power against the aliens instead of her. With a steadying breath, Lena made her first move. She shifted slightly to one side, creating a small opening for the dragon's line of sight. The creature's massive head turned, following the subtle motion. Lena extended her hand again, this time using a deliberate rhythm. A pattern of taps and gestures she had tested silently, almost like a code. The dragon's eyes followed, its breathing slowing further. It was responding to her actions. The Varkari froze for a moment. "What is it doing?" One hissed. One, "It should attack." They gestured wildly, but the dragon remained calm, its attention entirely on Lena. She realized with a thrill that the creature might actually protect her if guided correctly. She had found a way to influence the monster without aggression, using observation, patience, and intelligence. Encouraged, Lena tested another small gesture, moving her hand closer to a glowing crystal nearby. The dragon followed her motion, craning its massive neck to observe. She noted how it reacted to light and movement, how it adjusted its position based on perceived threats. Each subtle motion reinforced her understanding. She was learning the language of the dragon, not spoken words, but gestures, patterns, and responses. The Varkari, sensing their control slipping, grew louder and more aggressive. "Kill it! Kill her!" one shouted. They fired small, harmless energy pulses to intimidate the dragon. But it only recoiled slightly, then returned its gaze to Lena. She realized that the creature did not respond to pain or fear the way the aliens assumed. It reacted to intelligence, to calmness, and to deliberate action. Lena's mind raced. If she could keep the dragon calm, she could turn it into an ally against the aliens. The thought was terrifying yet thrilling. The dragon's size, strength, and intelligence combined with her understanding could overthrow the very beings who had kidnapped her. Her pulse quickened, but she remained steady, breathing slowly, moving with care. Minutes passed, and then the dragon made its first move of cooperation, nudging its massive head toward the pool of water. Lena understood immediately. The dragon was testing her. She approached slowly, limping on her ankle, and tapped the surface of the water. The dragon mirrored her motion with its massive claw, careful and controlled. A bond was forming, not of friendship, but of mutual understanding and respect. The Varkari shrieked in fury, realizing that their plan was failing. "It obeys her," one hissed. "No human should control the dragon." But Lena had already predicted their anger. She waited for the exact moment when their movements would expose a vulnerability in their formation. Every step, every motion of the aliens became part of her map, part of the puzzle she intended to solve. With careful timing, Lena gestured toward a pile of rocks that could be toppled to block the aliens' path. The dragon's massive body shifted in response, nudging the rocks slightly. Lena moved with precision, coordinating her gestures and the dragon's instinctual reactions. Slowly, the environment was bending to her plan, not theirs. The cavern echoed with the sound of falling rocks, alien shouts, and the deep, resonant breathing of the dragon. Lena felt a thrill of fear and excitement. This was her chance. The moment she had imagined since her capture, using her mind and courage to influence the impossible, was unfolding before her eyes. She was small, injured, and underestimated. But she was no longer helpless. Hours passed as Lena and the dragon engaged in a delicate dance of gestures, observations, and subtle influences. Every movement she made was calculated. Every response from the dragon studied and recorded in her mind. The aliens above were growing desperate, their confidence turning to fear as their control slipped further. Lena felt a surge of determination. If she could maintain this bond, if she could continue to understand and guide the dragon, she could survive, and perhaps even escape. As the cavern grew darker, lit only by the faint glow of crystals and the dragon's shifting scales, Lena settled into a position that allowed her to observe everything. The dragon rested its massive head near her, eyes half closed but alert. She touched a glowing crystal gently, noting its pulse, and the dragon followed her motion once more. It was a fragile connection, but a connection nonetheless. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "We can do this. We can survive." The Valkyrie continued to shout and gesture, their anger rising, but Lena's focus never wavered. She was learning, adapting, planning, and for the first time since her capture, she felt a glimmer of hope. She was not alone in the cavern. She had an ally, silent but powerful, massive but responsive, a creature of legend and fear that could, if she played her cards carefully, help her survive the impossible. Lena's mind raced with possibilities for the next stage. The dragon could move obstacles. Its strength could overpower the aliens. And her intelligence, patience, and courage could guide it. She felt a sense of clarity she had never experienced before. Fear had not paralyzed her. It had sharpened her senses, honed her focus, and opened her mind to solutions she would never have imagined before the capture. The cavern, filled with heat, glowing lights, and the scent of alien metal, seemed less like a prison and more like a battlefield, a place where intelligence, courage, and careful observation could triumph over brute strength and cruelty. Lena settled on the rock, ankle aching but spirit unbroken, watching the dragon breathe, pulse, and react. The real challenge was only beginning, but she felt ready. The bond between human and dragon had formed, fragile yet strong, and Lena knew that together, they might change everything. The cavern seemed to pulse with energy as Lena adjusted her position on the jagged rock, her small hand brushing the smooth surface of a glowing crystal. The dragon's massive head rested nearby, its golden eyes tracking her movements with a slow, deliberate focus. Lena's ankle still throbbed, every step from her fall, earlier reminding her of the fragility of her body. Yet her mind was sharp, alive with strategy. She understood the dragon in ways the Valkyrie could never anticipate. It was a creature of instinct and intelligence, capable of logic if approached carefully, and she, small and underestimated, had become its guide. Above, the aliens grew restless. Their craft hovered just above the cavern floor, the hum of engines blending with the dragon's deep, resonant breathing. They shouted, gestured, and waved their strange energy weapons, expecting to assert control. But the dragon, immense and unyielding, remained focused on Lena. Every pulse of its chest and movement of its massive limbs indicated awareness, but not aggression. Lena's careful gestures, her subtle mimicry of its breathing and head movements, had begun to earn a level of trust. The dragon was no longer a weapon, blindly obeying its captors. It was observing, learning, and forming its own judgment. Lena knew this moment was fragile. She had to act carefully, testing the boundaries of the dragon's responses, while simultaneously preparing for the confrontation she sensed was inevitable. She crawled slowly toward a cluster of rocks near the cavern's center, maintaining eye contact with the dragon. Each movement was deliberate, a signal that she was not a threat, but also not helpless. The dragon's head tilted in unison with her steps, a subtle nod that encouraged her to continue. From above, the Varkari shouted commands, their tone sharp and impatient. "Do not delay. Strike now," they hissed. They underestimated the bond forming between human and dragon. Lena, small and seemingly fragile, was already calculating their next steps. She noticed the pattern of their movements, the timing of their gestures, the way they leaned too heavily on confidence. The aliens had never faced a human who used observation and intellect as a weapon before. With a careful hand, Lena picked up a loose rock and tossed it lightly toward one of the glowing crystals on the wall. The crystal pulsed. Responding to the touch, the dragon followed the motion, nudging a nearby boulder with its massive snout. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to anyone but Lena, but it created a small shift in the cavern's layout. Rocks fell, with a controlled precision, blocking a narrow path the Varkari might have used to descend further. Lena's heart raced with exhilaration. The first move had been successful. She was learning to turn the dragon's power into an advantage, subtly reshaping the environment around her. The aliens grew frustrated. They fired small energy pulses into the cavern. Not to harm Lena, but to assert control over the dragon. Yet, the creature barely flinched. Its massive eyes fixed on her, she could feel its understanding growing, its trust in her intentions solidifying. Lena had discovered a profound truth. Strength alone was meaningless, without intelligence and awareness. And the dragon, a being designed for destruction, was beginning to see that she was unlike the humans it had previously encountered. Minutes stretched like hours as Lena continued her delicate dance of influence. Each gesture, each glance, each measured movement was a test. The dragon responded with increasing subtlety, nudging obstacles, shifting slightly to create pathways or block the Varkari, and occasionally letting out a low, resonant rumble that shook the cavern. Lena mirrored its motions, her small body moving in rhythm with the massive creature. She was no longer a passive victim, she was a strategist, an active participant in shaping the unfolding battle. Finally, Lena saw the opening she had been waiting for. The aliens, overconfident and focused on forcing the dragon into obedience, had exposed themselves. A group of them moved too close to a pile of unstable rocks, their attention divided. Lena signaled with a subtle hand gesture, and the dragon reacted almost instantly. With a powerful sweep of its massive tail, it knocked the rocks over, sending a controlled avalanche that blocked the alien's path without harming Lena or the creature itself. The cavern echoed with the sound of falling stone, alien shouts, and the deep, commanding breathing of the dragon. The Varkari reeled in surprise. "Impossible!" one hissed. It does not obey us." The leader's face twisted in anger. They gestured furiously, trying to regain control. But the dragon had begun to act on its own, guided by Lena's careful influence. The balance of power had shifted. The humans, long underestimated, were no longer helpless prey. Intelligence, courage, and observation had turned the seemingly impossible into opportunity. Lena took a deep breath and limped closer to a glowing crystal cluster, her small hands touching the pulsing stones lightly. The dragon responded, nudging obstacles and repositioning itself to block alien reinforcements. Lena's mind raced with possibilities. She could guide the dragon further, using its strength to create barriers, isolate the Varkari, and eventually drive them out of the cavern. Every movement required careful timing, but she had begun to understand the rhythm of the creature. Together, they could outmaneuver the aliens without direct confrontation. The Varkari, growing desperate, began firing their energy pulses more aggressively. Sparks flew, bouncing off the cavern walls. Lena ducked and shifted her weight, careful not to provoke the dragon into unnecessary aggression. She was learning the balance of influence, showing initiative without creating fear. The dragon's massive body moved with precision, responding to her subtle signals, creating safe passages for her while pushing the Varkari back. It was a battle of minds as much as strength, and Lena felt a surge of exhilaration. She was shaping the outcome, guiding a creature designed for terror into an ally. Hours passed in tense coordination. Lena's small body moved with the rhythm of the dragon, her eyes scanning for weaknesses in the alien's formation. The Varkari, overconfident and underestimating her intelligence, continued to make mistakes. Lena exploited each error, using the dragon to block paths, topple obstacles, and create chaos among their ranks. Every move was precise, calculated, and deliberate. She was no longer a child trapped by circumstance. She was a force, small but intelligent, guiding the most powerful creature in the cavern. Finally, Lena saw the moment to turn the tide decisively. A group of Varkari had cornered her near the cavern's far end, confident that the dragon would obey their commands. Lena froze for a moment, making eye contact with the creature. She extended her hand slowly, tapping a precise rhythm against a nearby rock, a pattern she had practiced for hours. The dragon's eyes followed her motion, and it understood. With a controlled movement, it swept its tail, knocking the aliens off balance, while its massive head nudged a boulder to block their escape route. Panic rippled through the Varkari as they realized their control was gone. The aliens shouted and gestured frantically. But the dragon acted with calm precision. Guided by Lena's subtle cues, it moved with deliberate force, isolating groups of Varkari, preventing coordinated attacks, and creating barriers that made the cavern a maze only she could navigate. Lena limped and moved carefully, signaling each action, using the creature's immense strength to turn their own weapons against them. The Varkari's arrogance had been their downfall. They had assumed humans were weak, incapable of strategy. Lena was proving them wrong, and with every coordinated action, she was rewriting the rules of the encounter. Finally, the last of the alien forces retreated to their hovering craft, panicked and disorganized. Lena, with the dragon at her side, watched as they fled, leaving behind the cavern they had hoped would be her tomb. She could hardly believe what had just happened. She had turned the terrifying monster into an ally, outmaneuvered a superior enemy, and survived against odds that should have been impossible. Her mind was exhausted, but her spirit soared. Intelligence, courage, and careful observation had triumphed where strength alone could not. Lena limped toward the center of the cavern, her small hand resting against the dragon's massive snout. It nuzzled her gently, a silent acknowledgement of their bond. She smiled, exhausted but victorious. The dragon was no longer a weapon of fear. It was a partner, a being that recognized her intelligence and courage. Together, they had faced impossible odds and emerged stronger. Lena felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had survived, but more than that, she had reshaped the power dynamic in a galaxy that had long underestimated humans. The cavern, once a place of fear and oppression, now felt like a testament to resilience. Lena's eyes swept across the glowing crystals, the jagged rocks, and the vast, shadowy expanse of the dragon's lair. Every obstacle had been overcome with thought, patience, and strategy. She realized that even in a universe filled with creatures far stronger than humans, intelligence and courage could prevail. The lesson was profound and exhilarating. Being small or underestimated did not mean being powerless. Exhausted, Lena sank onto a flat rock, her ankle throbbing but her mind sharp. The dragon lay beside her, massive and protective, its eyes half closed but alert. Outside the cavern, the sun began to rise over the red plains of Zyre, casting light into the once dark lair. Lena had survived the impossible, outwitted the aliens, and gained a powerful ally in the dragon. Her small size, her intelligence, and her courage had turned a terrifying situation into triumph. The galaxy, she realized, had underestimated humans for too long. The cavern was quiet now, the echoes of the Varkari's retreat fading into the distance. Lena sat on a flat rock, her small hands still resting lightly on the dragon's massive snout. Her ankle throbbed, a reminder of the injuries she had endured, but her mind was clear and alert. She had survived the impossible, outwitted a terrifying enemy, and forged a bond with a creature that had once been a symbol of fear. The sunlight from outside filtered through the cavern entrance, casting a warm glow on the jagged walls and the dragon's gleaming scales. For the first time, Lena felt a sense of peace in the midst of chaos. The dragon shifted its immense head, nudging Lena gently as if to remind her that they were no longer just survivor and predator, they were partners. Lena smiled, exhausted but triumphant. She had learned the rhythm of the creature, the subtle signals that guided its movements, and the way it responded to intelligence and calm courage. The dragon had trusted her, and in doing so, it had given her the power to change the course of the battle. Outside the cavern, the red plains of Zyre stretched endlessly. The sun rose higher, illuminating the colony in the distance. Lena's mind raced with possibilities. She could return to her people, lead them safely away from danger, and perhaps even establish a new alliance between humans and the dragon. But first, she had to navigate the journey out of the lair, a task that required careful planning. The cavern was vast, and though the immediate threat of the Varkari had passed, there were still dangers in the environment. Unstable rocks, glowing crystals that pulsed with energy, and the sheer unpredictability of a creature as massive as the dragon moving through tight spaces. Lena rose slowly, supporting herself on the dragon's massive claw. The creature followed her lead, moving with surprising precision despite its size. Together, they made their way toward the cavern's exit. Lena used her small frame to scout ahead, signaling the dragon with subtle gestures when she spotted potential hazards. Rocks that could fall were nudged aside, and glowing crystals were avoided, their faint pulses lighting the path in a gentle, steady rhythm. The dragon, guided by Lena's observations, adjusted its massive body with care. It was a delicate dance, strength and intelligence combined, human and dragon working in unison. Lena felt a surge of pride and relief. She had not only survived, but had learned to guide and influence a creature far larger and more powerful than herself. Every step out of the cavern felt like a victory, a proof that even the smallest human could navigate a world of enormous challenges with courage and ingenuity. As they reached the mouth of the cavern, Lena paused to look back at the lair. It had been a place of fear, a test of endurance and intelligence. Now, it was a symbol of triumph. She had faced the dragon and the aliens, and through observation, patience, and courage, she had turned fear into opportunity. The Varkari would remember this day, and the humans of the colony would too. But more importantly, Lena had proven something to herself. Intelligence and bravery were as powerful as strength, perhaps even more so. Stepping onto the open plains, Lena felt the heat of the Zyre sun on her face. The wind carried the familiar sense of her home, the dry soil, the distant greenhouses, and the faint metallic tang of the colony's machinery. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe freely, to feel the warmth and light on her skin. The dragon followed closely, its massive body casting a protective shadow over her. Lena realized that she had not just survived but had created a new kind of freedom, a partnership that could protect her and her people from future threats. The journey back to the colony was slow. Lena's ankle still hurt, and the dragon moved with deliberate care, ensuring that each step did not endanger them. Along the way, Lena observed the environment carefully, noting the patterns of the terrain, the locations of rocks and pools of water, and the subtle currents of wind that shaped the shifting sands. Every detail was important. She was not merely walking but strategizing, ensuring that their path was safe and that they could reach the colony without attracting further attention from the Varkari or other dangers of Zyre. When they finally reached the outskirts of the human settlement, Lena could see the colony bustling with activity. Workers moved between buildings, carrying supplies, tending to crops, and repairing equipment. None of them had noticed the alien attack retreating hours before, and none yet understood the significance of Lena's return. She paused, taking a moment to steady herself, then signaled the dragon to stay close, but calm. Its massive presence could easily cause panic among the colonists, and Lena wanted to control the situation carefully. She stepped forward cautiously, raising her hand to signal peace and safety. The colonists froze at first, staring at the enormous creature behind her. Children clutched their parents, and adults instinctively reached for tools or makeshift weapons. But Lena's calm, confident presence reassured them. She had returned, unscathed in spirit, and her confidence radiated outward. Slowly, the colonists lowered their defenses, curiosity and awe replacing fear. "Lena?" a voice called out. It was her father, moving quickly through the crowd, worry etched across his face. When he saw her, unharmed and guiding the dragon, his eyes widened in disbelief. "How?" he began, but words failed him. Lena smiled gently, signaling him to remain calm. The dragon lowered its massive head, tilting it slightly in a gesture that seemed almost reverent. The colonists watched in stunned silence, the reality of what Lena had achieved settling over them. A young human girl, injured and small, had survived a capture meant to be fatal, outwitted a terrifying alien species, and formed a bond with the galaxy's most fearsome creature. The weight of the moment was immense, yet Lena remained composed, her presence a beacon of courage and intelligence. Over the next hours, Lena guided the dragon carefully around the colony, demonstrating its intentions through calm gestures and movements. The colonists began to understand that the creature was not a threat but an ally, responding to Lena's commands and protective of her and the settlement. Children approached cautiously, drawn by curiosity and awe, while adults marveled at the partnership that had formed. Lena explained, as best she could, what had happened. The capture, the lair, the dragon's responses to her gestures, and how observation, intelligence, and courage had allowed her to survive. The story spread quickly throughout the colony, inspiring every colonist. Lena's bravery became a lesson, a demonstration that humans were not weak or helpless in the face of superior strength. Her experience proved that intelligence, courage, and careful observation could turn impossible situations into opportunities. The colonists began to plan, realizing that the presence of the dragon, guided by Lena, could offer protection against future threats from the Varkari or other dangers lurking in the galaxy. Days passed, and Lena's bond with the dragon deepened. She learned more about its instincts, its responses, and its behavior, while the creature seemed to understand her intentions more clearly with each passing day. Together, they patrolled the perimeter of the colony, creating a sense of security that had never existed before. Lena's presence and leadership inspired confidence among the humans, while the dragon's massive power and loyalty served as both protector and symbol of human ingenuity and courage. The Varkari, from their distant vantage point, had not forgotten the events of the cavern. They knew that their attempt to instill fear and assert dominance had failed. The humans of Zyre were no longer passive, and the girl who had survived their trap had become a figure of legend. Their arrogance and underestimation had cost them, and Lena's intelligence had reshaped the balance of power. Months later, the colony began to flourish in ways previously thought impossible. With the dragon's protection, human engineers explored new territories, expanded the settlement, and gathered resources that had once been inaccessible due to alien threats. Lena's leadership and the alliance with the dragon became central to every operation. The humans had discovered that courage, intellect, and careful planning could overcome even the most formidable challenges. In the evenings, Lena would sit beside the dragon, her small hands brushing its massive scales, feeling the warmth and life of the creature that had once been an instrument of fear. She reflected on her journey, from the moment of capture to the triumph in the cavern, and finally, to the restoration of her colony. Every step had tested her patience, courage, and intelligence. But she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident in the power of the human mind. The dragon, once a symbol of terror, now served as a guardian of the colony. It moved with deliberate care, responding to Lena's guidance, protecting humans from threats that might arise, and reminding them that even in a galaxy filled with creatures stronger than humans, intelligence and courage could prevail. Lena understood that her story was more than survival. It was a demonstration of what humans could achieve when underestimated. She had turned fear into opportunity, weakness into strength, and isolation into alliance. One evening, as the twin suns of Zyre dipped below the horizon, casting the red plains in gold and shadow, Lena looked out over the colony. Children played safely near the domed greenhouses. Adults worked confidently, and the dragon rested nearby, its massive body coiled protectively around the settlement. Lena's heart swelled with pride and hope. She had survived the impossible, led a powerful creature to cooperation, and ensured the safety of her people. The galaxy had seen the underestimated human mind at work, and Lena had proven that even the smallest, seemingly weakest among them could achieve greatness. The story of Lena and the dragon spread beyond Zyre, carried by travelers, traders, and explorers. Other colonies began to take notice, inspired by the example of intelligence, courage, and resilience. Lena's journey became a symbol of hope, a demonstration that humans, no matter their size or apparent weakness, could confront fearsome challenges and emerge victorious. The galaxy, vast and dangerous, would never again underestimate the power of the human spirit. Lena's eyes met the dragon's as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky. There was understanding between them, a silent acknowledgement of partnership, respect, and trust. The girl who had been injured, captured, and underestimated had become a leader, a hero, and a symbol of human ingenuity. The dragon, once a weapon of fear, was now a guardian. And together, they had reshaped the destiny of a small colony on a distant planet. In that quiet moment, Lena realized that true strength was not in size or weapons, but in intelligence, courage, and the willingness to face the unknown with determination. The galaxy was wide and full of challenges, but she was ready. Humans had survived, adapted, and prevailed before, and with her mind and heart, guided by observation and bravery, they would continue to do so. Lena had turned the impossible into reality, and the dragon by her side was proof that even the most terrifying obstacles could be overcome through trust, intelligence, and courage. The colony thrived. The dragon remained a protector. And Lena, small but formidable in mind and spirit, became a legend. Her story inspired generations to come, a reminder that even the weakest could stand against the strongest, that cleverness and courage could bend destiny, and that humans, underestimated though they might be, could face any challenge the galaxy placed before them. The suns of Zyre set once more, bathing the plains in golden light, and Lena, the girl who had survived the dragon and the aliens, looked forward to the future with hope, confidence, and an unbreakable spirit.